Hi, my name is Kerri Aronoff, and my report today is on the Inupiat Hunters and the land. What I will be reading will not coincide exactly with the pictures, but the pictures will depict what I am reading about. Western science has played a big role in the studies of the native lands, working alongside the native peoples. With the concern growing for pollution to the native foods hunted and gathered, which stemmed from the Exxon Valdez oil spill back in 1989, and the harm it could create within the subsistence living many villagers rely on, the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, issued a grant to assist in the research needed. Among those researchers included the native Alaskans, so that their traditional knowledge would be a part of the research. With their ever-growing and evolving populations, elders concerned for the youth to continue hunting in the ways which is traditional, studies being conducted and people invading their sacred lands, it's been a challenge for some researchers to gather the correct information. The new government, with its laws after Alaska was purchased by the United States of America, trying to restrict their hunting to numbers was a major concern for the Alaska natives. They just want to hunt and fish and provide for their families as they always have. The government's concern: will there be enough to continue to provide for these families if there is no control to ensure that the 20+ years from now the natives will still be able to continue to provide and hunt the way they always have? ANCSA has been a huge contributor to the rights and in fact has been more important to Alaska and its people than the Statehood Act itself. With the native villages, people are complaining about the sports hunters and what they are doing to their lands and how they are scaring away their herds and causing migration changes, which are making their foods they hunt to feed not only their families but their entire communities to store for winter months scarce. As I discuss the native Alaskan subsistence living, which includes gathering, hunting, fishing, and traditions, including celebrations and prayer, we will also look into the ways in which subsistence life has been affected by nature, the government, and large corporations. When I took a trip a couple months back to a small village called Kivalina, I spoke with elders and hunters in the region and learned a lot about how life really works in the village. This included the ways in which nature is affecting their very land and may force them to have to relocate. Coming from a large city in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, where we don't hunt or live a subsistence lifestyle, and everything comes from the store, to living on a farm in Ohio and helping raise chickens and livestock for food and sale so we could support our farm life, to my life here now in Alaska, my eyes have opened a lot in the past 4 years. For most Native Alaskans, they either grew up living in a village or their families did. Subsistence life isn't exclusive to Native Alaskans, no matter their regions, but my paper will focus mainly on how hunting and their very ways of life have changed for them due to nature's destruction, large corporations, as well as our very own government dumping toxins into the land, and show how it affects people's ways of life. Subsistence living consists of living off the land and its resources that it's provided. The air, land, and seas all provide foods in which are consumable, from hunting big game to fishing to berry gathering and to the birds in which are hunt. These are vital to life and a part of the high quality and foods in which are consumed. Hunting consists of fishing and gathering, as well as traditional hunting. Most villages lived off the land for most of their existence. While most have the luxury of dry goods being shipped to them from Anchorage or the lower 48, not all villages have the access by plane or delivered from another village. Subsistence living consists of hunting, dip netting, fishing, whaling, camping, boating, cutting and drying meats and fish, butchering catches, picking berries, gathering eggs, river seining, which is using 2 or 3 boats up the river with 2 to 3 people in each boat, as well as sometimes men on dry land with a 200 to 250-foot net, which have 1-inch holes which can catch enough fish for approximately 500 people to last them for the winter. Climbing onto the mountains to scope out the land for catch is a way of which many hunters set out. Traditional foods are higher in protein. They don't have all the chemical treatment that processed food do and are much less fatty. Game hunting is very much different. That would be buying from a market, grocery store, or even a butcher, since there is no processing of the meats. Since the cost of non-traditional foods is overwhelming, traditional foods are a vital staple within a household, and they rely highly on the foods they hunt and gather through the entire year. Studies have shown that the nutritional value offers more vitamins and fibers than non-traditional foods could. These traditional foods, which native Alaskans hunt on land for bears, wolf, moose, caribou, mountain sheep, wolverine, goats, polar bear, just to name a few. While at sea, the big game is whale, bowhead, and beluga, walrus and seals. The year-round fishing is also just as vital to their diet. While traditional foods for each village is generally the same, not every village have access to the seas, while others have limited or no access to much land. There are those which don't have access to the land resources that others do. In these cases, many of the villages rely on other villages to trade or share their hunt. Gathering eggs and berries and fish, along with cutting and preparing the meats, was considered a woman's job, if it wasn't already done on the boat or where it was hunted, while the hunting of the most big game is still in many villages a man's job. Some foods which are more desirable than others would include animal fat, caribou, bowhead, whale, beluga whale, walrus, seal, berries, and fish. From what I understand, is back in the day that many villages would hunt in large groups and share within their own communities, with a feast after returning home. Now it seems in many villages today that it's each his own. A family hunts for their own family, but if you're lucky, a friend or neighbor will share their hunt with you. You have to have a son or husband to rely on now in most of the villages, while I am impressed to hear that in the villages like Selawik, for most part, women are the hunters. Even elders, if they have no living or close relatives, they would have to rely on the hopes that someone would share even a portion of their hunt. Now they have programs in places like Manilik to assist the elderly and share the traditional foods for which their volunteers have hunted and gathered. This is sad, as when I visited Kivalina, the hunters told me that someone who hunts for their entire community. I have brought home some native foods and shared with a very grateful elder, who is a dear friend of mine, and I refer to as my Anna, or my grandmother. Her daughter introduced me to native foods, and I must admit I enjoy a good variety of them constantly. Though I have yet to try most, I've tried a good portion of them. I think that the muktak or bowhead whale is quite tasty. They say that the animal fat from the whale as well as the sea oil are what keeps them warm throughout their long winters. In any hunting Alaska natives do, they all have and share a belief of respecting themselves, the land, and their hunt. Prayer is a big thing. In our readings, according to Phineap and Riordan, patience, knowledge, experience, respect for nature, and the right equipment are vitally important in any type of hunt. When hunting from whales, from the preparation to the celebration afterwards, these remained very traditional. Before a hunt, the whaling captains took their boats all to the whaling, and all the whaling equipment to the church to be blessed for each whale which is caught. After this, the whaling captains would have a meeting on breaking up the ice and making a trail. When a whale is caught, the community comes together. It takes about 60 to 70 people to haul in the whale onto the ice. They spent all day cutting the whale before the ice was to melt from the body heat emitted from the whale. After a successful hunt, the people and the crews of their families would have a celebration. Nalakatak, from my understanding and how it's said, here they have a feast, sing, and have a blanket toss to celebrate. According to Moss in our readings, when hunting as a crew in one boat, the captain of the crew gets to choose his choice of the catch, and the remaining crew divides it up equally. When hunting as a larger group, meats and sea life would be distributed amongst the community after the captains and crews got their shares of the better meats. Here we have a picture of what the gatherings and the celebrations look like. There are many subsistence activities in play, and we are still in use in many of the villages, and most just rely on just that. They live off what they catch and gather, but they also use goods in trade for dry goods, which are shipped in as well as other types of goods for the home. Before the white man came in with its technology and new ways, hunting equipment consisted of bows, harpoons, knives, spears, boats, dog sled team, nets, baskets, and traps made from animal skins and natural materials. You will see pictures of these as the slide goes on. Most commonly, seal or walrus hides made the lining of the boats. Walrus or seal intestines were used for the baskets and the snare traps. After the white man came in and introduced its new technology, the hunting is done more with four-wheelers or aluminum boats with motors when traveling out to fish or hunt during the spring or fall. Snow machines during the winter with the sled to carry their hunt home. The whalers use small explosives in their spear tips now. According to them, the animals suffer less. Instead of bows and arrows, they're using rifles. Some people still use the same style of baskets, and even some traps. Whalers mostly use the same boats as they did back in the days, rather than a noisy boat with an engine. Inupiat invented both the toggle-headed harpoon and the umiak, a long open-skin boat up to 50 feet long for whale hunting. Their clothing consisted of animal skins, parkas that utilized layering, and drawstrings to combat the extreme Arctic temperatures. They built semi-subterranean sod houses with underground entrances that housed 8 to 12 people and were heated by body warmth and seal oil lamps. Though in other villages of Native Alaskans, the homes were communal and shared by up to 200 people. Even at the camps along the rivers were built this way. Now they are more structured homes. Most of the houses have running water, and almost all with electricity. Camps are in place for the hunters as a place of resting while traveling up and down the river, though it is rare to have electricity, let alone any running water. The villages themselves were once just camps of a moving culture from Mongolia to Asia and Canada to Greenland. The bilateral social organization of the Inupiat and identical to that of the modern American society, maternal and paternal relationships assume equal importance. In fact, the name of the system of kinship terminology is Eskimo. The Inupiat were not so much affected by the Euro-American contact until the arrival of the Yankee whalers in the 1850s. When contact did occur, however, entire communities were decimated by the introduction of alcohol and disease. The indigenous people live off the land and what it can provide for them. This includes selling and trading. Many have turned to wage employment, while few others prefer to live the way of the elders. Many just try to survive and provide for their families. The shift was deemed inevitable, as goods and expectations for them would continue to grow beyond what subsistence fishing and hunting could provide. It was once described that there was a successful combination of subsistence and wage economies. Since the non-traditional foods are becoming more of a staple in households, costs of gas to run the boats, four-wheelers, and snow machines are of high demand. Trading foods, hides, and crafts was not as much of an option to cover the costs of these. Larger corporations came and took over the land and offered a small portion of the work to some villagers, as well as the opportunity for the residents of Alaska. Though most of the work was and still is sadly taken by those who don't even live in Alaska. Some families have even decided that work was more important than subsistence living, and others are moving away from the traditional style of living to move into larger cities. Alaska Natives, people, customs, and values are placed upon the land, and the subsistence foods provided to them conflict with the formal rules set forth by the government. Studies and surveys were done on the North Slope Inupiats on how much subsistence harvests actually accounted for their household foods. The Inupiats were wary of the reports done in 1977 surveys, and they felt giving more accurate numbers would cause restrictions on their harvests. To this day, the people of the villages still feel that the studies being done and the restrictions placed upon the subsistence foods still violates their old ways and will continue to cause problems for the future and their kids by placing restrictions on how many of each of the animal they can hunt. Here you will see some original hunting equipment that was used back in the days, such as bows and arrows and spears and axes, which were all a part of everyday hunting and lifestyle. They were made of bone and hide, and the snare traps as well, which they used to catch wild animals. The original housing, which was of sod, and now of more structured homes. Fish drying, hunting celebrations, and blanket toss are all ways of celebration. of the gathering and the hunts.